What is going on, guys? Today let's talk about reloading, especially as to whether or not you should get into reloading. Whether it's right for you, whether it fits in with you and your life and your needs and your lifestyle. That's what we're going to talk about today. Also, you guys know I usually give a tactical tip towards the end. Well, I'm going to give you a tactical tip up front today. If you go whitewater kayaking and you have your phone in a dry bag, then you stop at some smooth, slack water. By God's grace, go fishing and catch some fish, take some pictures. Once you then go back on the water, remember to put your phone back in the dry bag before you hit a bunch of whitewater and get soaked. If that sounds rather specific, I did this yesterday. And my phone is not working. So I say that as a tactical tip, but also as just an explanation as to why I'm not in the group chat and or updating Patreon as much. Because I don't have a phone. By God's grace, we'll be back up and running soon. Mobile and hostile. Also on that, I did a rather lengthy, much longer than I normally do, episode on reloading basics and reloading components. It was a long episode. This is not that episode. That episode was in my drafts. I'm still holding out some hope that I may get it back once I get the new phone. So I'm going to do this episode on taking a step back and should you even reload? Does it even make sense in 2026? Right? Reloading landscape is far different than what it was when I first got introduced to reloading, 30 years ago, give or take. With that, I guess we better get into the intro and the bio. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns, gunfighting tactics, reloading, and wet phones. The right way, hopefully, with God Almighty at the center. Biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I normally say military, law enforcement, private security contracting, competition shooting, etc. Today I'll talk more about reloading. I'm reloading off and on for a long time. I've reloaded rifle, pistol, shotgun. I've cast lead. I have been blessed to win, by God's grace, more competitions than I can remember. I've won many of those with hand-loaded ammunition. So that's a little bit of bona fides there for hand-loading, reloading. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Okay, so should you reload? I got to go to my paper notes here because I don't have a phone. So back to basics. Should you reload? Should I reload? If you're thinking about this for yourself, very deep introspection. To reload or not to reload? That is the question. Okay, the number one thing, you can buy ammo, you can buy reloading stuff, you can buy fancy progressive presses, but one thing you cannot buy more of is time. Time is a precious commodity. Do you have time? Reloading takes time, more than just, let's say, getting on AmmoSeek and buying a case of 9mm or a case of 223 and having it delivered to your house. Reloading takes time. I don't care how fast your progressive press is, reloading takes time. The time it takes you to buy reloading components, you could buy finished ammo and have it delivered and cut out the reloading. Time is precious. One reason I don't reload nearly as much as I used to. I'm trying to find time to get some shooting in. Get training in, get in some competitions, which I haven't been able to do these last couple of months because I've been working 2 jobs. What was supposed to be part-time private security contracting for the government, with everything going on, as you may deduce. Things going on in this country, things going on around the world. I'm not going to get too specific, but there's stuff going on, and not everything's about me, so I stepped up and been working some more shifts. So I get time is precious. If you don't have the time to get out and shoot and train, probably not the time to get into reloading, because that's going to take even more time. Unless it's a specific season where you can't get out and train, but you can reload. Like, I don't know, you got 2 broken legs. So you're not going to be outside doing a bunch of tactical training classes. Or it's, when you're listening to this, not when I'm recording it, but when you're listening to this, it's, the middle of winter in northern Saskatchewan, and you're probably going to be inside quite a bit. So, but you get the idea. Time is precious. Reloading takes time. Even learning how to reload halfway competently takes time. This is the number one question you should ask yourself. Do you have the time? The next one I'm going to tackle is something, it's kind of a myth, I think, in the prepper sphere. And I'm a prepper, I'm a survivalist. I don't shy away from either one of those terms, right? And I reload. But I don't think a good reason to get into reloading is so you'll always be able to get ammo. I think this is kind of a way to justify reloading because you want to justify reloading, but practically it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you can get reloading components, you can probably get ammo. And if you can't get ammo, you probably can't get reloading components. Yeah, you can stockpile primers and powder and bullets and cases. Less so the cases because you can reuse them. But not any more so than you can stockpile ammo. Right? And the people that make the primers and the powder, those are the ammo companies that make the ammo. And when ammo gets in short supply, they're using their components, their primers, their powder for themselves, which just makes sense, right? They're their components. If you can't get ammo, you probably can't get reloading components. And if you can stockpile reloading components, you can probably stockpile ammo. So that doesn't make a lot of sense there. Unless you get deep down in the survival rabbit hole, like you're making your own primers, which you can do. You're actually making your own black powder, which you can do. Right? It's 3 pretty simple ingredients. People have been making their own black powder for a long time. But unless you're doing that, making your own primers, making your own black powder, and like reloading, smokeless cartridges with black powder, which you can do in some calibers, 38 Special, 45-70. Unless you're so far down that rabbit hole, it doesn't actually make logical sense to say I'm getting into reloading so that I can reload ammo when I can't buy ammo. It just doesn't make logical sense. So let's just get rid of that one. Let's talk about cost. There was a time, I think, when reloading was quite a bit cheaper than factory ammunition. This is sometimes the case today, but often not. If you look at common calibers like 9mm, 223, you are probably not reloading those cheaper than you can buy them. Especially if you're buying all new components and like new brass. If you're reusing your brass, then you'd probably want to compare it to remanufactured ammo, which is quite a bit cheaper because that's what you're doing. If you're reusing your brass, you're making reman ammo. And reman is quite a bit cheaper. I don't think even if you factored yourself in making minimum wage, and I hope and pray that you're not working for minimum wage, but even if you factored in paying yourself minimum wage to reload your ammo, I doubt you could crunch numbers and really penny pinch, but I don't think you would be able to reload as cheaply as you could buy ammo for common calibers. So, and if you're a prepper, survivalist, whatever, or competitive shooter, you're probably shooting a common caliber, right? You're probably shooting 9mm or 223, maybe 308. So financially for those, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Where it still can be financially viable is more, and not even obscure calibers, but not the big, like not maybe the top 5. You're talking about like, 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum. Yeah, absolutely, right? If you want to stockpile 44 Magnum, it's way cheaper to reload 44 Magnum, especially if you're casting your own lead bullets. It certainly is going to be far cheaper to reload that ammo if it's, again, not a obscure caliber, but not a super mainstream caliber. Like, let's say something like 35 Remington. Or what's another good example? Not 30-30, that's pretty mainstream, but maybe 32 Winchester centerfire. That one probably makes sense to reload for financially if you have the time. So these are just some examples, right? Quality of ammo. Accuracy is part of this, but it's not all of this. I generally try to dissuade people from, let's say, reloading their own defensive handgun ammunition. And I do this for 2 reasons. The lesser one is we live in a litigious society. Maybe something that comes up in court like, oh, your factory ammo wasn't deadly enough. You had to go make your own specialty extra deadly ammo. I'm less concerned about that. I worry about problem number 1 first, which is stopping the threat. And again, I've done a lot of reloading, especially handgun. And I don't think, honestly, I can make handgun ammunition as good as they can make good high-quality defensive ammunition. When you get like a top-quality brand, I'm not brand loyal, but Spirit Gold Dot, Remington Golden Saber, Black Belt, Winchester Ranger T, Hornady, Critical Duty, right? Just many and many more. I don't think I can make handgun ammunition that well and that proven. One is they do a lot of testing to make sure that ammunition will expand at velocities out of generally a full-size fighting handgun, which is what I carry, right? And they do a lot of testing. So use things like low flash powders and they water seal primers. You may even have some kind of water seal component around the bullet. And again, the big thing they can do is they can do a lot of ballistics gel testing. Different weather conditions, right? Through different media, windshield glass, drywall, sheet metal, heavy clothing. I'm not doing all that. To talk about time, even if I did a little bit of that for each, they do a lot of that testing if it's a good proven street load. To mention actual street use, because a lot of agencies use those. So I'm not going to put in the testing that a big ammo company is going to put into, let's say, pass the F.B.I. defensive handgun ammunition standards. So I think they're going to make better ammunition. So just from a practical standpoint, that's not where I want to pinch pennies, right? The couple of magazines that I have on me, either on duty or as a well-regulated citizen, I'm not trying to save a few cents on my defensive carry ammo there. And I think they can actually make it better than I can, even though I have a ton of reloading experience. I trust those big ammunition manufacturers to make better ammo and more tested ammo than I'm going to be able to do. So getting on quality. And part of that is accuracy. We move over to rifle. And, 30 years ago, heck, 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. 15 years ago is around the turning point. You could probably easily say, if you're a half decent, competent hand loader, you could hand load rifle ammunition more accurate than you could buy factory loads. I don't think that's the case today. Unless you are just an extremely OCD perfectionist, and I mean that in a loving way, because I'm that way sometimes when it comes to guns and ammunition. But unless you're that dude, just the most hardcore kind of OCD personality when it comes to reloading and components and things like that, you would be hard pressed in most situations to be able to beat factory loads that are made for accuracy. Now, I'm not talking about like you're just cheapest bottom of the barrel ammo, but that's not what we're comparing it to. But like a really good, accurate target load or competition load for a rifle out of an accurate caliber, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, right? You are probably going to go through a lot of effort and time and testing to maybe get as good as factory ammo today. Factory ammo today is extremely good if you're going to spend the money on good factory ammo. So I don't know that you are going to beat the accuracy. You might. For the super uber OCD guys that are going to like water measure and test their cases and special ogive measuring seating stuff and just maximum OCD type stuff. You still can, I think. But for the average person, the average reloading setup, you're going to be hard-pressed to beat the accuracy of rifle reloading. So accuracy, again, I think it's a different landscape than it was even 20 years ago. Kind of to prove this case, a lot of, 20, 30 years ago, man, if you had an MOA rifle, that was bragging rights. Like, you had an MOA rifle, like an honest MOA rifle, a little over an inch at 100 yards, that was like something special, and you often had to work hard and hand load for that. Well, nowadays, you can go buy off-the-shelf ammo and go back to some of those older rifles that were around decades ago, and they'll shoot sub-MOA, which tells you it wasn't so much the rifles, it was the ammunition. The factory ammunition has gotten that much better. I would not be surprised if you got an old pre-1964 Winchester or an older Remington 700 or Savage 110 from 20 years ago or before, that with good factory ammunition now will shoot sub-MOA that wouldn't have 20 years ago. Why? Because the factory ammunition has gotten better, more consistent, better bullet construction, better powder technology, better manufacturing technology. So again, accuracy, I don't think that you're getting it there. Here's some big reasons why you may want to reload. Specialty ammo, right? Specialty, there's like a load that you want to make that you just can't get. You don't want to jump on the suppressor bandwagon and spend, $1,000 on a machine that should cost $40. And if you don't have to pay for the tax stamp, but you want to shoot quietly, you could hand load a very heavy for caliber, like say 44 special or 38 special. I'm talking like 300 grain, 350 grain, super heavy, super low velocity, faster burn rate powder, and a normal length barrel and a carbine that's super quiet, without a suppressor, without a tax stamp, without you having to, jump through all that stuff. You want to make that, and you can make that pretty easily if you hand load. Going back to specialty, like you shoot competition and you want this load. Like I talked about, I won a lot of competitions with my hand load, and that was like my hand load for a long time. And I didn't want to be concerned about if I could go to the store and find this load or that load. I wanted my load that I made and I know cycled well out of my competition gun. And that's a big one. You want your load. Or let's say you want a super fast load. One example that came up, the content may have gotten deleted on my phone, but actually I think I already uploaded it. Not sure. But the 6.8 Western, it was a cartridge I was really looking at getting for a good Western hunting rifle. But all the stuff they have now is just, the high BC just makes me want to vomit. Everybody's drooling over high BC bullets. So all the 6.8 Western, although a good caliber, it's all loaded in these super heavy for caliber bullets. I don't want that. I don't care about that. I don't think it's ethical for this long range, deer elk hunting. I don't like that for time of flight reasons. Even if you can read the wind perfectly and call your shot perfectly and dial your dope perfectly, I still don't think it's ethical. I know you could jump on the hater bandwagon for that, but I don't. Digressing and going back to the 6.8 Western, it would be a super versatile caliber if you could load, let's say 120 grain bullet up to 175 grain bullet. But they don't. They start at like 155 up to 175. But man, for something like deer, if you're a max point blank range hunter or pronghorn, if you could load 120, 130 grain bullets screaming fast, that'd be a sweet pronghorn cartridge. If you hand load, it still can be. But not if you're buying factory ammunition, at least not at this point. That's one example. Here's another example. 30-30. It's a good caliber, good deer caliber, inside its limitations. Well, most lever actions, most 30-30s are lever action. However, not all. I know at least Savage made a bolt action 30-30. I've seen a few of them. They made a bolt action 30-30. There's also single shot 30-30s. Well, all the lever action 30-30s I'm aware of feed from a tubular magazine, which means you can't have pointed Spitzer bullets unless you do something like the Hornady lever evolution. Right? So you're kind of handicapped there. If you have something like a Thompson Center Contender or that Savage bolt action, you can load pretty much any other 30 caliber bullet that will fit in the magazine length that you want because it doesn't feed out of a tube magazine. You can have modern Spitzer bullet, modern by like 1890s, late 1890s standards, right? 30-30 came out in like 1895. Pretty soon around that same time, Mauser came out with German military, whomever came out with modern Spitzer bullets. Maybe it was the French. You get the idea. You could load, let's say, bullets more commonly found in 308 or 30-06. 150 grain Spitzer bullet or 150 grain solid copper. If you can get it to velocity enough to expand. That's an example of a specialty load that you're probably just going to have to reload for. Or 30-30 is another good example. Talking about reloading affordably, 30-30 ammunition is pretty affordable. 30-30 is one of those with such a pedestrian velocity, you're right on the cusp of being able to use hard cast lead bullets. So you could hard cast lead bullets at a moderate velocity, heavy for caliber, and cast your own lead bullets. If you have a good, affordable source of lead weights, like somebody that has a tire shop and they'll give you the wheel weights, right, then you can shoot and reload quite a bit of 30-30 cheaper because you're reusing the cases and you don't have to buy projectiles, right? So then, yeah, you're probably going to be quite a bit cheaper. That's another example, specialty load that you're just not going to be able to buy. Or if somebody does make a cast lead 30-30, I'm not aware of it. So specialty loads. And perhaps the biggest reason you may want to reload is it's enjoyable. At least if you have the personality, it can be very enjoyable and satisfying. Just sitting down at a reloading bench, doing a task like, seating bullets, when you finally seat that bullet and complete that load, that round, and take it out and inspect it, and it's good, and you made something with your own two hands mechanically. Like, you didn't ask, I try to stay away from using AI, and I try and disable the AI stuff on search engines that I use and stuff like that, but because I think it's getting off on a side tangent. I think it's good for man to think and reason on his own. I don't think we should be outsourcing our logic and reason to a machine. I think that's bad for humanity as a whole and probably for us as individuals. So it's good to step back and make something mechanically without AI, right? Without a bunch of other stuff. Just a man and simple machines making something. There's something really satisfying about that. Something good about working with your hands. You may find that you really, really enjoy it. Not a task to get through, but a procedure to enjoy and develop and get good at. That alone, I think, can be worth it. It's also very satisfying to, let's say, take that round that you loaded and take a deer or an elk with it that you made. If you're the kind of person that would find satisfaction in that, that is a good reason to reload. And with that, since you already got a tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. So you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of you. None of you shall suffer miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my fear before you. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. You'll find that in Exodus 23. There are blessings all throughout the Bible for the men that follow God. I would encourage you to read Deuteronomy 28. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.